We are live. We are back in the Senate Judiciary on April 3rd. We're now taking up page 744. Please have him from the six attorneys and sheriffs to be share their perspective on that. So, always elections.
Thank you so much. For the record, Kim McManus, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. So the bill, as it was passed out of the House, we do not have an objection to it. We don't necessarily support it. We don't think it's needed per se. We think the system currently works well. But the language as described by Representative Lalonde basically reiterates current practice that a judge may set certain criteria for when law enforcement needs to get in touch with the prosecutor before calling the judge after hours. When the Criminal Rules Committee had initially proposed the rule back in the fall, the language was shall, that for every warrantless arrest like that shall be the multiple phone calls. And that was where our department had a very strong objection. Depending on the county, that was going to be potentially very onerous for our department and for law enforcement. When we felt like a number of those phone calls probably would not be necessary. And we pointed out for everyone that our on-call attorneys only receive $50, 24-hour shift to be on call. So if you're being woken up 3 or 4 times, that $50 becomes very, does not become worthwhile after a while. Yes.
I'm just curious because I genuinely have no idea. And have taken on call in my role, and I imagine it's somewhat different. Is it sort of the expectation if you're an attorney on call that you will be woken up, or are there times that you're not woken up, or like what does that look like?
It varies, and that was the message we were conveying back in the fall to the Joint Judicial Committee, Rules Committee. It can absolutely vary. You can be on call and not get woken up for a few days. You could be on call and have 10 phone calls. In the larger counties, more phone calls. Larger counties have more attorneys to share the load. So you might be on for a few days, or you might have a week, and then you transition off. Smaller counties, you have the state's attorney and maybe only one deputy. So half the office is on call all the time. But again, in the smaller counties, they might go for days without a phone call. As you might imagine, certain holidays, long weekends, certain times of the year, you'll see a increase in phone calls. So yes, we had strong opposition in the beginning to the shall. The may language does reiterate current practice, and we do appreciate the need to remove the line that is now in the bill, lines 13 and 14, that's just a correction. The arresting officers are not charging, the prosecutors are charging. So we appreciate that needs to be taken out, and that's come up in the past. So that's just really clean up.
So folks are essentially neutral on the bill, is that?
We're neutral as written,
yeah.
As long as it stays with the base. If somebody came in and advocated strongly for the must and the shall, then we would be back to speak with you.
So maybe I mentioned that and I'm figuring what they're trying to obtain through this language or whatever else. What is, in your opinion, what is the largest, the may and the shall? That's the only thing we can refer to here as being the biggest change in this?
Well, this is the biggest change from the committee rule.
Yeah.
As it was proposed in the fall, it was going to require, and essentially require it for every warrantless arrest, that the prosecutor be included. So the arresting officer needing to call the prosecutor before being able to finish their affidavit and reaching out to the judge if there was going to be, and ask for conditions or all things. And so that it had to be for, the way it was written with rules, it would have to be for every all hours warrantless arrest. So with this language of may, then the judge is setting for their county, I want a prosecutor involved. For a hold without bail, or
Well, I'm here
prosecutor.
for 6 months or whatever, so here.
Exactly.
It'll change, it'll
Provide-
change from,
and it could change, but the nice part about keeping the may, and what our hope would be is that presiding judge is taking into account that unit and the resources in that unit, the depth. Within these law enforcement agencies, I think they're able to have a better feel for it, and probably through experience, maybe through a few phone calls, might adjust their rules depending on what they're being called for. If they feel like, okay, I don't need to be called for this scenario, they could then put that out to their unit.
this used to be a time to simply call it clerk.
And I believe in some
For
counties, you still,
misdemeanors.
right, I think you still can, depending on the county.
Um,
And again, as long as it's May, then it's the judge establishing that.
So the law enforcement has to stay informed as to what's in policy every time we have a changing of the guard within our court systems here.
Eventually, but I think that's
Eventually, okay.
true right now.
Thank you.
I think keeping it as may makes a lot of sense. Maybe any other questions? Do you have a question?
I have a question. It might be for council, maybe it's for Kim, but with the language of may, can't they already do this?
Precisely. So this is really just reiterating what is happening. It's just putting it in rule.
I think there was, I think this was Judge Treadwell testified. Don't want to worry now, but I think that's why you see July 2nd as the effective date, is because the rules committee is taking up the same issue. They vote on July 1st. And
So the rules committee, so yes, the rules committee is still considering this issue. And for the rules committee, their rules can go into effect either July 1 or I believe December 1 or January 1.
I think it's January.
I think it's January 1. So January 1 or July 1. And so I believe the reasoning here for the effective date of July 2nd is that this will keep the current practice. And if the rules committee really wants to push the must to the shall, they might continue to do that, but it wouldn't go into effect until later.
Can you remind me if the rules committee is contemplating may versus shall, or what's currently on their?
That I'm unsure of, and that means, and when Judge Treadwell testified, I believe he said he was waiting to see, I believe he said we're waiting to see what the legislature
Yeah.
does, so I think they were sort of in a holding pattern. But I don't know what that means in terms of whether they're really stuck on shall or if the legislature signals, let's keep it with may,
Yeah.
whether they would follow that, I don't know.
And keeping it as is. Any other questions?
Well, we're essentially passing a law that does nothing.
No,
But if they can already do this,
so. I think it's. Perhaps there is a lack of clarification in different districts. Perhaps that's part of it. And putting it in statute provides that the presiding judge may require shall is described, as opposed to what the rules committee may be contemplating, but I can't remember. I'm not sure what the rules committee is contemplating. But I think, yeah.
So Eric Becker, also which said council, so the last iteration before the rules committee was shall. So it was a requirement that the attorney's office be involved in the affidavit. So, that would be a change to the current practice. Proposal you have in front of you is not to go that route, and instead keep current practice. As Kim indicated, the chair of the Criminal Rules Committee of the court, Treadwell, indicated that they're gonna wait and see what the legislature does, but the last iteration before the Rules Committee is shall.
Yeah.
So if you choose to pass May with a July 2nd effective date, then that would overrule the proposal from the Court of Rules Committee. If, which we don't know, they decide to go ahead and do the shall change anyway. And it's
So presently, it was May that they had,
Yeah.
have a new one in front of them that says shall.
correct.
They were proposing to simply bring it back to May again.
Exactly.
Wow, it's a long road.
It is.
The fact
But it
that
would be a-
between the branches of the chair.
It'd be a strong signal that the legislature would like to keep present practice. And we'll see what the, this committee does with that signal. But we would appreciate it if they stay in the present practice.
Makes sense. What my favorite is. They're representing on. But anyway, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tucker, are you with us? Morning.
Ooh,
Can you hear us?
you can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, thanks for joining. We just wanted to hear from Department of Public Safety, see if you have any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, thank you. And not much really more than the discussion that you've just had with Kim. Well, first of all, thank you for having me all, and Tucker Jones with the Department of Public Safety. The thinking here is if it's true that all the interested parties here agree that this change to Rule 3 merely codifies what is existing practice, then there isn't much more to add here. And if there's a need to codify it, then so be it. And it sounds like, perhaps in the context of what the Rules Committee is considering, et cetera, there may be, some logic to that. But the kind of hope and expectation is that everyone is on the same page, that we are just codifying existing practice here. Because if there was a change, then we would all need to iron that out, and we would need to have law enforcement, up to speed on what the expectation is. But that's about it. I don't have anything really additional to add from what Kim said.
Sounds good. Thank you. Committee, any questions for Tucker? Okay, great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So we can go on this sometime next week. The off chance any other folks follow up, send us concerns or questions or anything. Next up, we'll have Michelle at 11 still. Yeah, and it's okay. So we have that. All right. Wait, no, we haven't got the walk. So you'll be here for
Yeah.
later. Okay.
Saw that on the schedule, but I